commissioner who was a constituent who lived at the Commons, and she passed in her sleep, which I am really grateful for. And then the other person that I wanted to remember is Victor DeSuvio, and he came during a time when we were having poetry readings, and he was a very well-known poet in the community of Santa Fe and of San Francisco. Santa Fe Poet Works celebrates love and relationship. He was really a kind-hearted man, and it was such a great opportunity. He was at that time at Brookdale, and a number of people, including the manager's mother, came for the time when he read his poem for us. And so I would just ask that we take a moment of silence for these two individuals that have passed in the last few weeks.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. And I'd also like to recognize Isaac Archuleta, who has recently passed, is a constituent of mine, and also Urban Martinez, who owned RPM tractors in Espanola. He also passed. So just a moment of silence. Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Okay, thank you. Okay, next we're going to move on to item number 1F, and this is the approval of the agenda. Are there any questions or changes to the agenda requests from commissioners? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Manager Miller, did you have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The original agenda was posted Tuesday, July 20th at 5:01 p.m. and then we posted the amended agenda last Friday, July 23rd at 4:07 with the following amendments. In section 3A, the packet material for the proclamation was updated. Section 5A, the request authorization to publish title and general summary, that item is withdrawn to a future BCC date. The Ethics Board wanted some more time to work on the recommended changes to that ordinance. Also, item 5F, the resolution, that packet material was updated. And 5G, also that packet material and caption were updated on Friday. Then item 5H, that packet material was also updated, providing a budget and the engineer's estimate. And then item 10B, executive session, that item is withdrawn. We have no need for an executive session.
Okay, thank you, Manager Miller, for that update. Are there any questions or comments from the commission? Okay, seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I would like to move to approve the agenda as amended.
So
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hanson and a second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So we have an approved agenda. So we're going on to item number 2. And this is approval of meeting minutes. 2A is a request approval of the June 29th, 2021 Board of County Commissioner regular meeting minutes. Are there any changes for the stenographer? I'm going to go to Commissioner Hanson.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have presented the changes to the stenographer, and with that, I move to approve with changes.
Second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Hanson with changes that she's submitted to the stenographer, and a second from Commissioner Hughes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. So we're moving along to item number 4, and this is the consent agenda. And as all the commissioners remember, we did have
You missed number 3.
the proclamation. I'm sorry. So the proclamation that was added was 3A, and this is a request of approval of a proclamation proclaiming June 27th through August 2nd as Melinda Romero Pike Week. And we have Commissioner Hansen that has brought this packet, this item forward. Commissioner Hansen, thank you for bringing this item forward, and I'll go ahead and give the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it is with extreme great sadness to announce that, and I have mentioned this before, the passing of Melinda Romero Pike. She was a heroine in our community. She did so many wonderful things for this community. She was so committed to the village and the history of Agua Fria. And I have a proclamation that I am going to read into the record. And then her 2 sons are here, David and Stephen, and I would like to ask them if they would like to say some words after I read the proclamation into the record. It is amazing that all of the things that she did for this community, and especially for Agua Fria. She was so committed to the Santa Fe River especially. She loved the Santa Fe River, and she was so honored to be a river commissioner. And I was so grateful that when I became a Santa Fe River commissioner, that she liked to say that I took her place. And that to me was a great honor. So with that, I will read the proclamation.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Hansen.
Whereas Melinda Romero Pike was born in Agua Fria Village in Santa Fe County on February 19, 1927, to Luis Romero and Valerie Rivera. She was raised in the ancient and historic traditional Agua Fria Village and traced her ancestry to Bartolomé Romero II from Corral de Amurga, La Mancha Reina de Castilla, España, and the 1598 Oñate expedition. Whereas Melinda came from a long line of generous and community-minded individuals. Her grandparents, Marie Albina Romero and Jose Antonio Romero Isaya, lived in Agua Fria during the late 1800s and opened their home in the center of the village for many public uses, including a clinic for visiting doctors, a polling place, and a community meeting spot. Whereas New Mexico State Senator Nancy Rodriguez often speaks of the Romero family's relentless unselfishness, Senator Rodriguez honored Melinda Romero Pike for her many accomplishments in community activism on the occasion of Melinda's 90th birthday by introducing a resolution to the New Mexico State Senate in 2017. And whereas Melinda's contribution to the Agua Fria and the larger Santa Fe County community, which you will read about below, certainly carried on this tradition of relentless unselfishness. She said of her family, "Our parents did not have hoards of money, but they possessed a treasury of strong values, high morals, character, and firm conviction, always love for God and neighbor." Whereas when Melinda was 5 years old, her mother died. She was raised by her aunt in the village and attended a one-room schoolhouse built by the Works Progress Administration, WPA, and graduated in 1944 from Santa Fe High School. Whereas in 1945, Melinda moved to San Francisco, where she enrolled in business college, worked as a secretary for Lieutenant Commander at the Commandment 12 1912 Naval District, volunteered as an usher at San Francisco Metropolitan Opera, and worked as a freelance high-fashion model of furs, gowns, and hats. Whereas Melinda is a member of the greatest generation, a generation of citizens that sacrificed much during the Great Depression and served our country during World War II and after, and whose legacy of service to others, church, and community is our greatest gift. Whereas Melinda returned to Santa Fe in 1949 and later married David Stephen Pike, aka Leon Edgar Pike, on November 22, 1950, and both returned to Santa Fe in 1954. And whereas Melinda's loving husband passed away on May 18, 1963, and she became a widow at the age of 36 with two boys, Stephen and David, aged 9 and 11. And whereas in those early years after losing her husband, Melinda worked as a secretary at Cristo Rey and St. Anne's and San Ysidro parishes, and at Catholic Charities, and later at the district court. And whereas a lifelong resident and active member of the Agua Fria community, she was the first woman to serve on the San Ysidro Parish Council, the board of Agua Fria Community Water Association, and the Agua Fria Cemetery. She was instrumental in raising funds to build a new multi-purpose center for the San Ysidro Parish and acquiring the land on which it was constructed. And whereas she is also served on the board of the Santa Fe Community Action, the Villa Teresa Catholic Clinic, and Catholic Charities, whereas after surviving breast cancer in 1973, Melinda co-chartered the Santa Fe unit of the American Cancer Society and was a member of the National ACS Research to Recovery and Cancer in Minorities Committee, serving as a volunteer for 20 years. Whereas she helped to organize a number of successful fundraising events and received the prestigious Teresa Lesser Memorial Award, the highest national award for service in the American Cancer Society Reach to Recovery program. Whereas she was hired at the age of 70 and worked for approximately 22 years as hostess, bartender, and assistant manager at the Tortilla Flats in Santa Fe. And whereas Melinda reflected on in 2017 that when she was hired at Tortilla Flats, her only experience in the restaurant business was to go eat. And whereas so beloved was she by the community and her employees, she was selected as one of the 3 Santa Fe Living Treasures in 2004 after being sponsored for the honor by Tortilla Flats CEO Dean Alexis. And whereas Melinda wrote stories about family lineage, culture, history, lifestyle, church, and community, and became known as a storyteller and historian during her employment at the district court. Whereas on October 26, 2010, Santa Fe County honored her as the official historian of Agua Fria Village and named Romero Park in honor of numerous ancestral familial contributions to the Agua Fria Village in honor of Maria Albina Romero and Melinda's grandmother and descendants, including her siblings and Melinda herself. And whereas Melinda referred to the Romero Park as the heart and soul of the community, where all sorts of activities took place, and whereas she loved the Santa Fe River and believed in the rights of the Sacred Madre Agua Fria irrigation ditch, she wrote an outline for an amicus brief, Agua Fria irrigation, tracing the water rights in the village to pre-1896, and reported that the Agua Fria village property owners and farmers had irrigated their land since at least 1640 and had pre-1907 water rights, and that these rights proceeded for decades prior to the city of Santa Fe's construction of dams that retain the headwaters of the Santa Fe River. And whereas Melinda was appointed to the Santa Fe River Commission in 1994 and remained active for 21 years until she was 88, as a member of the River Commission, she helped to get the Living River Ordinance passed in 2012. This gave her a tremendous amount of joy. whereas she is proud that the Santa Fe River Commission members, the Santa Fe Watershed Association volunteers, and others who care so deeply have accomplished much to ensure a certain flow and level of health for the river she loves so well. Whereas she wished to be remembered most for her work to restore the Santa Fe River to its vast splendor, the green lusciousness of the river of her youth. And she offered universal wisdom to all in her biography when she stated, "If you enjoy good health and are strong, don't stop doing things. Volunteers are always desperately needed. Each day is a new beginning, and appreciate and to enjoy with people who touch your life." And whereas Melinda passed away on June 17th at the age of 94, and whereas the Santa Fe County Board of County Commissioners wishes to recognize the accomplishments, community activism, and remarkable life of Melinda Romero Pike. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Santa Fe County, do hereby proclaim the week of July 27th through August 2nd, 2021 as Melinda Romero Pike Week. And with that, I would like to move to pass this resolution.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do I hear a second? And we have a motion in multiple seconds. So what I'm going to do is I want to go ahead and anybody that would like to speak on behalf of Melinda to come forward and say a few words, and then I'd like for the commission to also say some words. So do we have the family here that would like to come forward?
Mr. Chairman and commissioners, thank you. I think my mother would have been very surprised. And of course she would have been honored, and she would have received this proclamation with great humility. On behalf of my brother David, his wife Elizabeth, my wife Margot, and myself, I want to express our gratitude from the family for the honor you bestow on her and in her memory. I think it can be said that my mother is an inspiration to many women of all ages. She demonstrated the capabilities of women and the contributions that women make to our society. As has been said, she was most proud of her work for restoring the river. Nothing would have made her feel prouder than to see the water run in that river once again on a permanent basis. With regard to the county commissioners, may I say that she recounted to me many times how grateful she was to the county of Santa Fe and to the commissioners for all of the attention and service and support that the commissioners have provided to the village of Agua Fria. She was enormously grateful to all of you for that, and to the citizens of the county of Santa Fe for all of that. When I asked her what she wanted most to be remembered by, she said, "My work for the river, and that I was a good mother." Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Roy Ball, commissioners, I'm here to thank all of you for the beautiful proclamation that and honor that you bestowed on my mother. She was truly community-minded. She worked very hard for the community. I know many of you knew her on a first basis. I'm going to miss her, and on behalf of my brother and myself and the Pike family, again, we appreciate all your support that you've always done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
William Mee, Agua Fria Village Association. Thank you, commissioners, for doing this proclamation and The proclamation, you could, I have little stories I could put after each one of those bullets, and she was just such a wonderful woman. And, I think, we're going to have a book about Melinda after all of this. She was just the heart of our community, and I thank you for honoring her this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mee. We do have a motion and a second, but under discussion, did any commissioners have comments? I know I do, but I'll defer to my other fellow commissioners. Commissioner Hughes?
Yeah, just real briefly, I wanted to thank Commissioner Hanson for bringing this forward. It's very good to hear about remarkable people like this, and she's an inspiration to what we could all do for our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Hanson? Okay, Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes, I just want to echo Commissioner Hughes's words. It's an honor to be able to recognize somebody who has been such a contribution to their community, and it's an inspiration. It's one of the things we can live by, to find people who really lead their community quietly and that we can aspire to emulate. And she certainly is that kind of person, was that kind of person.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The village of Agua Fria. I spent many years of my life in that village. I actually went to Agua Fria school there. Yes, I was a roadrunner there at the Agua Fria school, Agua Fria Elementary. Mr. Gallegos, thank you for teaching me a portion of my life how to read, and thank you for doing what you did for the community. Nonetheless, I can remember Mrs. Pike. One of the times when I first started working here for Santa Fe County in 1991, roughly about 1994, 1995, the village was kind of split. They actually they were determining whether or not they would annex into the city of Santa Fe or whether they wouldn't. This chamber was extremely filled. I've never seen a meeting like that other than the La Cienega development. In this entire chamber, where you couldn't even walk through the halls, you couldn't even walk in here. And Ms. Pike was actually one of the lead individuals for that village that actually got up and spoke. And my hair was black back then, but I can still remember her when she wasn't afraid to speak about her village and to speak about where she grew up and where she was from and the importance of the village out there. And she did. And it was a very heated topic, and the individuals in her group succeeded. And I'm happy to hear that the village, the historic traditional village of Agua Fria, is still a historic traditional village of Agua Fria, and does not allow for any annexation of any city to go into that area and make it become a municipality. The village has a lot of history there, more history than all of us can even think of how much history is there. There used to be a gas station there. Mr. Almirante, her brother, used to own the little gas station there, the store. I remember as kids, we used to off the playground and we'd run over there and we'd buy candy for little amounts and we'd run back for recess. And that was her brother, another gentleman that was very instrumental in that village for the water system and water rights, as Miss Melinda Pike was in regards to the Santa Fe River. And water is what was in her mind as into the future of that village. Like I said, there was a gas station, there was a water system there, the park there, many different types of individuals came up that road. That was the old El Camino Real. But we actually have one of the oldest pueblos, the second oldest archaeology site in the state of New Mexico is right under there, right down probably 2 lanes away than where Miss Melinda Pike grew up. Going to Tortilla Flats, she probably didn't remember me, but that's fine. I remembered her because I can see the different mind thoughts that she actually thought about that village and thought about her family. And I would go to Tortilla Flats with a couple of friends, different individuals, and I would say, point out that lady. I say, that lady has so much institutional knowledge in this village or in this area. We have lost a lot of institutional knowledge for that portion of the community. And to see her get in her car and drive off, I'm like, that's pretty cool. She gets in her car and she can still go and go and go and go and go. And she went and went and went till she finally said it's time for her to rest a little bit. And with all of the challenges that we face these days in the communities, nationwide, statewide, and locally, she did her best, and she did a lot for that village of Oliver Frio, as well as all the activists, the individuals that are still active in that community. Very good community. They have questions, they speak up, and they get things done. And with the leadership of her, a lot of people from that community, I can name all kinds of families out there. Gallegos, Pradas, Chavez, Romeros, Ulibris, Montoyas, and on and on and on, for individuals that still live in that village and grew up there. And thank you for bringing this forward, Commissioner. This is actually very, very good, especially for an individual that worked for her community and did a lot for her community. And thank you for her family members for being here and her friends that are out there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Hanson, did you want to close, or do you want, because I was going to say some stuff, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hanson. And you know, I think first and foremost, I want to say thank you, Commissioner Hanson, for bringing this forward, and thank you to Melinda's kids and family that actually allowed her to put the time in that she needed to volunteer to be a huge instrumental part of the Oliver Frio Village. And you know, I sit there and I listen to some of my uncles that are in their 80s, and they tell me stories that, you know, they remember going by wagon, you know, to some of the mountains where we own property. It was in Los Alamos before the laboratory was there, and you know, they ended up, the laboratory, when the federal government came in, they ended up purchasing a lot of the property from the landowners. But just listening to those stories, and I'm sure Melinda had so many stories. 1927 is when she was born, and so we all know that, you know, back then, you know, probably they traveled by wagon and horseback, and just listening to those stories, you know, is so wonderful to hear, you know, and knowing where we came from, and realizing what our heritage is. And I can't say enough about, you know, how valuable that is. So I want to, you know, just encourage the family to cherish those memories and share those memories with your kids, all the stories that she had from when she was growing up, and where Oliver Frio came from, and what the village was before, because those are important. Those are a part of our heritage and history that sometimes we forget. And I think that it's really important, you know, for us to remember that, and just commend Melinda for all her hard work and everything she committed to her community, because you don't always see that. And to see such a strong leadership back, you know, from, you know, for so many years is wonderful, you know, and just a strong woman to raise two sons that are, you know, here today. And I think there may be other children besides sons. I may be wrong, but I know that you two coming forward and just looking at you, she's got to be very proud of you guys. And so I'm just honored to be here today to recognize her and to remember her legacy that she's left behind. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. Commissioner Hanson?
Thank you, fellow commissioners and Mr. Chair. I'm grateful for your support. And I did mention also that maybe we could have a picture with the family and the commissioners, since I see Daniel standing at the doorway. And I have the original proclamation to present to the family. Also, I want to mention that tonight is her rosary at 6:30 at San Ysidro Community Center. And then on July 29th, there is a funeral mass for her at the Basilica, St. Francis Cathedral. And then afterwards, there will be the burial at the National Cemetery, and then a gathering after that. So that was part of why I wanted to make it for a week, because my constituent liaison, Sarah, who I could not do all this work without, and I want to give her credit for compiling all this information together. We worked really hard to make this a proper and respectful proclamation for Melinda, because she was such an important person. And I think over the weekend when we had all this rain, I thought of Melinda, and I went down to the river and by her house at San Ysidro Crossing, and the river was just raging and roaring, and I was thinking, oh, Melinda must be really happy to see all this water in the river, because it was just so amazing to see so much water in the Santa Fe River all the way down to Calle del Oro Grant Road, and especially by San Ysidro Crossing. It was great as I was standing there taking some pictures and thinking about Melinda. The fire trucks came and closed the gates, and I was so happy to see them come and close the gates and just keep the water separate and precious for that running of the river. And it felt like it was running in her honor, because I know how much she loved the river and how much I love the Santa Fe River, and how grateful I am that I had the opportunity to get to know her and spend time with her and work with her. It was a great opportunity. And so, Mr. Chair, if you would like to take the vote for the proclamation, I would be grateful.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson, and thank you for sharing that story. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously, and congratulations, and God bless you, and rest in peace, Melinda. So if we can come forward and we'll take pictures.
We stand here.
Okay, once again, thank you, Commissioner Hanson, for bringing that proclamation forward and just being able to remember Miss Melinda Pike, Melinda Romero Pike. It's just really wonderful for us to be able to recognize somebody for their community service. Next, we're going to move on to item number 4. And this is the consent agenda, and I believe that we did have an added item, but if commissioners, or actually that's under miscellaneous, so if there's anything that commissioners would like more information on, let me know. If not, then what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, nobody has any, I'd like to bring off item A and item C.
Item A and item C, you would like further, you would like questions on that? Is that questions regarding item A and item number C? Is that correct, Commissioner Garcia? Okay. I think that it would be good if we can go ahead and ask those questions, and if we get them resolved, then we can actually move forward with approving the consent agenda. So go ahead and ask the questions that you had on these two items, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 4A is actually a final order, which is for a 23-lot subdivision. And it looks like they're actually getting a variance of the water requirements not to utilize a community water system. And so they're getting a variance. Is that just for phase 1? And if they are getting a variance, if we do grant the variance for phase 1, do they have the adequate water rights for that phase?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, as part of the BCC's approval, there was a variance granted to allow them to continue to utilize the 2 domestic wells that are on the property for phase 1 only. And then prior to them recording the final plat for phase 2, they will be required to submit water rights and acquire a water rights permit from the state engineer's office, or water use permit, excuse me.
So this is actually just a time extension, Mr. Chair. This is actually a time extension. They already were granted the variance a while back, as well as the final plat approval. This is just for a time extension.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, so as far as the variance goes, once they, prior to them coming in for phase 2, when they acquire the water rights and a permit from the OSC, then the variance will no longer be needed. So in a sense, it's a temporary variance that was granted. They did get a time extension, though, also as part of this approval, to record an additional 2 years to record the final plat for phase 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Vicki, so 14 additional lots will not get any building permits or any water until there is a community or a water utility or infrastructure to that property?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, yes, phase 1 consists of 9 lots. We won't even let them record the plat for phase 2 until they have the water rights in place and the permit from the OSC.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So are the 9 lots actually, have they already been constructed on?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, 8 of the 9 lots do have residences existing, which are utilizing the existing wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia, and I also want to say thank you to our case manager, Ms. Vicki Lucero, for those answers. Commissioner Garcia, you also had a question on item number C.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. This is actually an approval for an amendment number 2 to agreement 2017-0289-ACORR. IC. This is actually, does this actually include, well, what's the amount for the agreement that we currently have, and is this an increase to the amount?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Garcia, this is an extension to the term for another year for a fixed rate. They are based, they provide a price sheet in the original contract that is a discount to their catalog list price.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Taylor, can you tell me just in a nutshell, just for the record, what is this? What is?
For medical, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Mr. Commissioners, for medical supplies for fire department primarily, but can be utilized by any county department. Corrections, public safety primarily.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Taylor, for your explanations to Commissioner Garcia. And great questions, Commissioner. Thank you for bringing those forward. Are there any other questions, or I'll defer to you, Commissioner Garcia, if you're comfortable with the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, yes, thank you for the time to ask the questions. I'll move for approval.
Second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Garcia and a second from Commissioner Hanson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries, so our consent agenda is approved. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to go on to our next item. And this is going to be miscellaneous action items. The first one is 5A, which has been withdrawn. We're going to go on to 5B, and it's a resolution requesting a budget adjustment in the amount of $3,444,182 to various funds to correct errors made in the NM Department of Finance and Administration, Local Government Division, Local Government Budget Management System. And from our Finance Division, I believe that we have Ms. Yvonne Herrera, or our Director.
Chair Roybal, I'm here on WebEx.
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Okay, the resolution before you is a little bit unusual than what you're used to seeing as far as budget adjustments go. Local Government Division requires that the county enter and submit its annual budget as well as any budget adjustments into LGBMS. Therefore, both systems should equal each other at all times. Unfortunately, in prior fiscal years, the county received findings as a result of both systems not agreeing. So as part of the fiscal year 2021 reconciliation, 3 errors were discovered. After discussions with our liaison at Local Government Division, we were instructed that the only way to correct the errors was through a budget adjustment approved by the board. The first 2 errors are a result of the crosswalk that's required to crosswalk the county's chart of accounts into LGBMS chart of accounts with Resolution 2021-003 and Resolution 2021-020. They were crosswalked incorrectly, causing the budget adjustments in several funds to not agree to the county's financial records. Now, these two corrections will not be recorded into the county's accounting system because the MS. Once the board approves these 2 budget adjustments and we record the adjustments within LGBMS, the budget within LGBMS will match the county's financial records. The third error that was discovered was with Resolution 2021-057. The budget adjustment that was presented to the board was actually out of balance by $1. In order to ensure that the LGBMS system matches the county's financial records, as well as resolve the fiscal year 2020 audit finding related to the LGBMS system, we request the board to approve these budget adjustments. For any questions?
And Mr. Chair, I just want to emphasize, this is not an actual budget adjustment to our budget. It is a formality that the state is asking us to bring to the board in order to correct entry errors on their system. We do not use that system for our actual purchases or our accounting. We're required by the state to upload our budget into a state system so the state can look at our budget along with every other local government in the same format. But our system is not incorrect. Our system is correct, but this is the way they're asking us to correct their system.
Chair?
Go ahead, Commissioner Hughes, and then I'll go to Commissioner Garcia.
I'd like to make the motion for approval.
Okay, so we have
A
a
second.
motion from Commissioner Hughes and a second from Commissioner Hanson. Under discussion, Commissioner Garcia.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Manager Miller, for actually clarifying this. As in two, with the confusion was at the state level and not at the county level. Because item number 3, we actually, or there was a dollar that was missing, which is very important. Then the other item, number 2, which is from budget year 2021, which is last year's budget, there was a huge amount of money that was actually a mess, as our director said. But once again, thank you for clarifying that this is not our clerical error. It was actually the state's. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Any other comments from the board? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. And, I know that this is a huge amount that, is $3 million is quite a bit that we have to make an adjustment for, but I know that we're making the correct decision to fill in those gaps. So any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, can we get a resolution number?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the resolution number is 2021-067.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to item number 5C, and this is a second amendment to County Utility Line Extension and Service Agreement, number 2017-0151-UT/BT. And this is from the Public Works, and I believe that we don't have Angelina Bean, as it says on the record here, but can you introduce yourself, sir? Thank you, Mr. Schneider.
And in January 2017, the Board of County Commissioners approved a 8-phase conceptual plan, preliminary and final plat for Phase 1 of the development. And the item that's before you today is an amendment for Phase 2. This amendment is in relationship to how the water budget applies to Phase 2 and requires the developer to assign the county 4.492 acre-feet of water rights to meet the utility requirements and specifications. In addition to that, the developer will pay a fee in lieu of for the remaining 17.898 acre-feet of water rights required for the completion of Phase 2. And this will all be done prior to recordation of the final plat. Unless changed by the resolution or ordinance, the fee in lieu of is calculated at $19,341 per acre foot in accordance with Resolution 2018-12, and that totals $346,000 for this project. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Brian or Mr. Schneider. Does anybody have questions? I do want to know whose district this is in, and I'm going to go to Commissioner Garcia. What district is this in?
Mr. Chair, it's in Commission District 5.
Okay, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going to need possibly maybe a little help from our Growth Management Department or Mr. Snyder, if you can actually answer these questions. In the past week and a half, we've been reading about the paper, reading in the paper in regards to where's all this water coming from for these developments that are in the southern part of the city of Santa Fe, this particularly being within the county of Santa Fe. In the memo here, we actually talk about in regards for the developers assigning roughly 5 acre-feet of water to the county utility in order for Phase 1, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, that's correct.
And in order for the developer to actually get Phase 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever additional phases, that developer will actually have to bring water to the table and or purchase water for their development from phase 2 on up?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, this amendment would modify that, so the original agreement, modify the original agreement, and they would either, you can either pay a fee in lieu of or bring water, you're correct, and they were proposing to bring little under 5 acre-feet of water, plus an additional 17.89 acre-feet in fee in lieu of.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in regards to the $19,341 per acre foot, is there some sort of stipulation in the agreement that we have with this developer and or any developer as to what if the price of the acre foot actually goes up in the next 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years? How is that actually addressed?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, it's my understanding that it's the $19,341, which is the current dollar per acre foot, or whatever the cost is at the time of payment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, just in regards to somehow I'd like to maybe sit down, or if Ms. Manager Miller would like this, is can we get an update on the from the utility department as to how many acre feet we actually do have banked and what's getting subtracted from that, how fast, when, so on and so forth? If that's okay with you, Manager Miller, please. Also, in regards to, I'm familiar with where the project is located at. So to the north, across the Arroyo there, is actually some existing, there's a BLM office there. There's actually Bigsby Court there, where there's some livable residential studios, work spaces. I know that the sewage from that Bigsby Court, those complexes there from BLM to where the El Pato Sol restaurant, everything on that north side of the Arroyo there has some sort of a challenge in regards to the sewer system going to the lift station on the other side of State Road 14. Will those individuals in Bigsby Court be allowed to connect, intertie to this new development, this turquoise trail north?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I don't have that answer, but I can look into that for you.
Thank you for letting me know that, for being honest with that. So maybe at the next possibly phase, Manager Miller, if we can have staff actually. So where I'm going with this is everything along that Arroyo corridor, all the way from State Road 14 all the way east. There's some development that's going to happen in that SDLC area, and there are several. There's 2, possibly maybe 3 different sewer systems in there. There's possibly 2 or 3 different major trunk lines in there. So I think for the best interest of the county in that entire area, as well as getting all of the waste to the quill plant, is for all the developers in that area to work with each other, and let's figure out what we can do to get one trunk line instead of having 3 or 4 different trunk lines. I know Osharo actually has their own septic system. So if we can somehow coordinate that, the staff can coordinate that with all the developers in that area, and let's see how we can get one major trunk line, hopefully up to our lift station and up to the quill plant. So those are just the questions I have in interest of that area. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. I'm going to go to Manager Miller to see if she can shine some light on some of those questions.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, it's in our plan, as well as we've actually sold some bond funds to start this. The lift station I believe you're referring to is the Bajo lift station that then takes the sewer from that area over to the city system. But our ultimate goal, as we complete the project at the quill plant or the reclamation facility, is to then connect, instead of to the Bajo lift station and send it to the city, is that we would be sending sewer from that area to our facility on the state pen property. Also in the plan is to working with the developer for phase 2 of Oshara is to take the sewer line. They're being required to take the sewer line from phase 2, which is to the east of the current Oshara. And I'm sorry, I can't think of the name of the development at the moment, but to take that line across the Dinosaur Trail, take it to past Oshara 1, past La Pradera and down towards that lift station, so that ultimately all of those communities will be able to hook into county sewer, which would go to the Quill plant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perfectly answered. I just want to make sure that we're coordinating with all the developers there, because once we start approving phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, El Shara, so on, we're just going to hope we don't get lost out there. And the larger picture of all this is, you know, when the city of Santa Fe actually is proposing to extend their wastewater treatment line north to the, I just look at the larger picture of all this stuff and how it's going to work and how it's going to come together in the next 15, 20 years or so, and even longer. So that's where I was going with the question. But thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Thank you, Manager Miller, and also thank Mr. Snyder. And do we have other questions, Commissioner Hughes? And this is Commissioner Hughes' district. So sorry, I should have deferred to you first, sir.
Oh, that's fine. Mr. Garcia asked some very good questions. But I just have a simple question, I think, which is this the, are there any steps after this for the development, or is it already, this has obviously been in the works for a while. Does this come back to us for final approval of the plat, or is that already approved and this is just adjusting the water situation?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I can't answer the plat question. It's my understanding, though, that it is just a water amendment to what was previously approved back in January by the board. So whatever the standard process is for recordation of plat, if it comes back here, that would be the standard process. The only change is the amendment that's before you today is for the water rights paragraph of that agreement that was agreed to back in January 2017.
Yeah, my constituents are asking the same questions as Commissioner Garcia's, is always where's the water coming from, and I appreciate the various meetings we've had where we've discussed that. But Manager Miller, did you have a thought on the process for this development?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hughes, I believe that development has been approved, and I know that certain phases definitely have had their preliminary and final plat approval. Greg was just trying to look up and see if we can see when it was, if that phase, if this is in the final phase. But several of those in that area have already received their preliminary and final plat approvals. And if there are any phases that haven't, then they would have to come back to the board for that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll go ahead and make the motion for approval of this.
We appreciate that, Commissioner Hughes.
Second.
Being your district, I'm glad you made that motion, and we have a second from Commissioner Hansen. So we have a motion and a second under discussion. Is there any other questions before we go to a vote? Okay, seeing none. Commissioner Garcia, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate Manager Miller bringing forward the kind of a description of the water rights, where we're at with our water rights in Santa Fe County, and I don't know, possibly maybe from growth management, can they show us everything that's planned in that area? I know it is, with all due respect, Commissioner, it is your area, and there's, you know, last month we actually tabled an RV boat storage place, because if you drive through that road and you look at that access that applicant's proposing, it does not even match up to this 500-600 lot subdivision. So I'm just reading into it as into what's this larger traffic pattern going to be at. I passed by the Santa Fe Brewing Company Saturday or Sunday. There's a lot of traffic out there, and adding 600 more homes, adding some RVs coming in and out of that State Road 14, I just have a little bit of concern. But if you can do that for us, Manager Miller, with your staff, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia, and great points. I appreciate you bringing those points forward. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay, this passes. So we have the second amendment to the county utility extension that is passed today. Thank you, Mr. Snyder. We'll move on to our next item, and this is item number 5D. And this is a resolution to adopt the Santa Fe County Transit Service Plan for fiscal year 2022, and to direct staff to submit and the transit service plan to the North Central Regional Transit District. And then I believe that we have Mr. Brett Clavio here today from Growth Management. Is that correct, Brett?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Roybal, Commissioners. My name is Brett Clavio. I'm with the Growth Management Department, and the item before you is a resolution to adopt the Santa Fe County Transit Service Plan for FY22 and to direct staff to submit that plan to the NCRTD. In your packet, Exhibit A lists all the NCRTD funded transit routes in Santa Fe County. And Exhibit B describes those routes into more detail and discusses the service updates for FY22, which are due either to New Mexico Department of Health capacity restrictions or due to NCRTD's recent short-range transit plan update. Additionally, Route 255 Mountain Trail will not be funded by Santa Fe County this year. And in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the resolution to adopt the Santa Fe County Transit Service Plan for FY22 and to direct staff to submit that plan to NCRTD. I believe we may have Mr. Mortellaro from the NCRTD here virtually if you may have any questions for him. Otherwise, you ask questions for me, and that concludes my presentation. Thanks. I stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clavio. Do we have any questions from the board? Commissioner Garcia?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you for your presentation in regards to Route 255, Mountain Trail. That is actually the route that will take skiers up to the ski basin whenever we get that large amount of snow. And is the city participating in half of that as we've done in the past?
My understanding is that they are not, that it's going to be funded by federal funds going forward.
Mr. Chair, so federal funds will pay for that entire route, that length of that route?
They're going to cover the section that we were providing for before.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to put that on the record that we actually are participating in getting a lot of individuals from the city and up there to the ski, and hopefully we have a lot of snow up there. In regards to the route, I guess here's where I'm going. Route 280, which is El Dorado, back into Santa Fe. We actually have Route 290, which is Edgewood, which goes into I've rode that route. And that goes into, starts in Edgewood about 5:30 in the morning. It goes to Moriarty, as it says here, Stanley, Galisteo. Is there any way, have we actually thought of it going down the county road that comes from Galisteo all the way to State Road 14 and possibly in Madrid to pick up individuals in Madrid? Because right now, we don't have a route in Madrid. Has anybody thought about that, or can we talk about that? And not now, obviously, but can I sit down with you and talk about getting some individuals possibly from Madrid into town?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, there is a route right now that's going into Madrid. It's the Route 270 Turquoise Trail. There's a stop right there by the bar, the Holler, right across the street there. We have a bus stop. The service consultant did look at Madrid service, and I believe they are proposing to increase some service for Madrid. And I know the community has some amazing ideas because we're also working on a separate project to increase transportation safety in Madrid. If Mr. Mortellaro is here, he could speak a little bit more in depth. There was a consultant that worked on the service plan for about 3 years, I think. I'm really trying to fine tune every single route. Did that answer your question at all, sir?
Mr. Chair, yes, you did. I guess I might have been a little mistaken, is in regards to the time slots. You know, people, if the bus goes to Madrid, let's assume 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, it's kind of hard for individuals that don't have any transportation to get into town, possibly maybe to work. So if you can just keep that in back of your head as into possibly altering the times of pickup and maybe possibly drop off would actually help out. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with that, if nobody has any additional comments, move for approval.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Garcia. So we have a motion. I'm going to go to Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I'll second that, but I have a couple comments. On the transit plan, yeah, I don't see any mention of bus stops or covers for bus stops. Is that in the plan, or maybe Mr. Martiali could mention or talk about, like in the village of Agua Fria, we do have a route. We don't have routes that go crosswise, but they do come down Agua Fria, but we don't have any shelters.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's an excellent question. The item before you is just referring to the transit service, but as far as the capital improvements for the district, they do, NCRTD does have a separate plan for capital improvements. And I believe right now they're working in Taos County and Rio Arriba County with the intention to move down to Santa Fe County in the near future to work on improving the bus stops.
That would be fantastic. And also, I just want to mention that I know that Commissioner Hughes serves on the NCRTD, and I am the alternate, but I want to let you all know that they asked me to sit on their design committee for their new logo, and we had a really good meeting on Friday, and it was a number of people from the city, myself, and from the tribes were also on this design panel with the consultants that were hired, and I look forward to continuing to sit on that panel. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. I couldn't agree with you more. Commissioner Hughes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a couple quick comments, and one is that I think the Regional Transit District is, very well run, and they have these fixed routes, but also they are starting to look at, in some of the service areas, operating a service that works more like Uber or Lyft, where it can be at the time that the person actually wants the ride, so you don't have to, be at the bus stop at a particular time, especially for routes that are more rural. It'd be interesting to see how that works out. It may be a lot more convenient for people in our more rural areas, so I just wanted to mention that. And of course, I've mentioned before that they also got several grants to buy electric buses to start using those, and so that'll be moving us into the future in a good way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I couldn't agree with you more, Commissioner Hughes, and I'm glad to, and all the, I think that the question was asked about the stops for the NCRT, or what, tell me the acronym.
Yeah, you could say RTD, NCRTD.
Okay. So, I think there is a lot of stops even in my community. I drive, when I'm driving out of my community, I see 2 or 3, and that's only a mile to the state road. So I'm really appreciative. I see a lot of my constituents taking advantage of the Blue Bus. So I'm really, really happy to see that this has been really successful. So thank you for that, and thanks to all the commissioners for all their comments. So we do have a motion and a second. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Can we get a resolution number, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the resolution number is 2021-068.
068. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go on to our next item. It's item number 5E, and this is a resolution approving the fiscal year 2021 fourth quarter financial report to be submitted to the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration, Local Government Division, as a component of the fiscal year 2022 final budget submission. And I believe we have our director, Ms. Yvonne Herrera.
Hello again, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. The resolution before you is a resolution that we bring every year at this time, asking the board to approve the fourth quarter report that is required to be submitted to the Department of Finance and Administration's Local Government Division. In addition to reporting the budget and the budget adjustments for the county is also required to prepare quarterly financial reports, which are due within 30 days of the end of each quarter. The report that is presented to the board today represents the unaudited revenue, expenditures, and cash balances, which also include detailed investment information for Santa Fe County as of June 30, 2021. In addition to the requirement of submitting this fourth quarter report, the county's fiscal year 2022 final budget approval is contingent upon the board's approving this fourth quarter report and the submission to the Local Government Division. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director Herrera. Do we have any questions from the board?
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a motion from Commissioner Garcia?
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Hamilton. Anything under discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Madam Clerk, can we get a resolution number for this one?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the resolution number is 2021-069.
069. Okay, that's the year I was born, 1969.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we're going to go on to item number 5F, and this is a resolution amending resolution number 2019-96 as amended by resolution number 2020-36 to designate a new polling place, voter convenience center for consolidated precinct 1472, 88, 114, 126, and 150. And from the county clerk's office, we have our esteemed county clerk, Miss Catherine Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the polling place that was in the original 2019 for Election Day was for Los Rios and Madrid was St. Joseph's Church, but that polling place has become unavailable. And so we reached out to Disability Rights New Mexico and looked for an ADA compliant site, and that ends up being the Madrid Volunteer Fire Department. So we worked with Chief Lindsay and District Chief Hansen and had the surveyors for ADA go out there, and we came up with a plan to make sure that we have ADA compliant voting for the fall.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Thank you for that work to make sure our voters had an ADA compliant place to go and vote. So thank you for that work.
And I do plan on alerting our Madrid and Los Rios voters by either we're looking at the cost of maybe mailing all of them, but also doing local radio, just making sure that we can let them know that their polling site has changed.
That's great. Thank you for doing that, Madam Clerk. Any other comments, Commissioner Garcia?
Mr. Chair, Madam Clerk, thank you for bringing this forward. I guess I was going to put it out there. How well did you actually talk with the constituents of Cerrillos? And the reason why I'm asking, Mr. Chair, is because I know it was actually always held in the parish of the church. And there's a lot of traffic that would go there and vote in the parish hall. And you and I did talk, and we spoke about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, unfortunately, the presiding priest there doesn't want us to utilize that facility. And for whatever reasons, I understand and I respect that. However, I'm just a little concerned as into when we do go into the Madrid Volunteer Fire Station, the road is road and parking is going to be a bit of a challenge, I feel, if I went to go vote there. And I understand nonetheless, those individuals can stop at the Turquoise Trail and vote on the way to work, on the way home, on the way to lunch, or anytime they would like, because now we have these voting centers throughout Santa Fe County. I can go vote in Chimayo, correct, or Glorieta. But I just want to know how clear it was to the residents of Los Rios as well as other people in that area that they're not going to be able to vote at the parish hall anymore.
So we were told absolutely not by the parish itself. So we actually reached out to the head of the Chamber of Commerce, to the local radio station, to some of the larger businesses, in both Sirius and in Madrid, just to get their help on suggestions of a space that would work in terms of parking, access for ADA, and had the space for us to be able to run a polling site on Election Day. And we narrowed it down to Madrid Fire Department, one, because they have a relationship with the county already. So, and two, when we had the ADA Disability Rights Group come and survey it, they actually preferred that location. So
when you said they prefer that location, who?
Disability Rights New Mexico, they have been working with us to survey all of our voting convenience center locations to make sure they are ADA compliant. We're coming up with a plan where we can put temporary ramps or door stops in order to make sure that on Election Day or during early voting, all of our voting locations are ADA compliant.
And so did the residents of I understand what the job of the ADA compliance group. So once again, the village of Cerrillo said, who from the village did we contact and from Madrid saying, we're not going to vote down 2 miles down the road anymore. We're going to vote over here at this. And then once again, I don't know if I didn't hear you correctly, but parking as well as the entrance to the Madrid fire station, how were you dealing with that again?
So one of the things that we do is if there's a difficulty for a door, what you can do, and one of the reasons why ADA, the Disability Rights New Mexico suggests fire stations is that you can open up one of the bays, and that will serve as handicap parking. So the plan is to have one bay door open and the trucks move to the other.
So the use of the facility, Mr. Chair, how are we actually going to let the people in Cerrillo know they're not voting at that parish hall like you've been doing for the last 40 years?
So we're planning on doing radio. There's a local radio station, and we are likely going to notify them with a written letter telling them that their polling place has changed for this election.
Okay, Mr. Chair, so Madam Clerk, what I'd like to do is have a meeting out there with the community, so that way we can, because there's no radio station there. There's no cell service there. There's a little locally owned station in Madrid for radio.
Yes.
But we probably need to go out there and sit down and talk with them and let them know why we're not going to be voting the parish hall for a couple or 2 or 3 reasons.
Okay.
So that way they can understand, because it's not really good when you go vote in the morning and
Right.
you can't vote there. So I will coordinate, or somebody from our staff will coordinate with you
Yes, please.
to figure out when we need to go meet with them, talk about a couple other topics as well.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Hansen?
I just want to note for the record that on Monday was the 30-year anniversary of the Americans with Disability Act, and I know that in the years past I've brought forward a proclamation recognizing that, and I'm just also noting that for the record, that is an important step, and that is why people have access to voting, because of the Americans with Disability Act. And I just want to let everyone know it was the 30-year anniversary on Monday.
Thank you, Commissioner Hansen. Any other comments? Okay, so do we have a motion? Yeah, and a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second it, but I definitely need to go out there and talk to some individuals, but I'll second it.
Okay, I don't think we have a motion yet.
I don't think we have a motion,
Do we
Mr.
have a
Chair.
motion?
I'll move to approve.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Hansen, a second from Commissioner Garcia. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, can we get a resolution number?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you for passing the resolution. The resolution number is 2021-070.
Okay. So we're going to go on to item number 5G, a resolution designating the polling place for each precinct in Santa Fe County, New Mexico, and consolidating precincts, amending the boundaries of 37 voting precincts and creating 25 new and separate voting precincts as required by Section 1-3-1B NMSA 1978. And once again, we have our esteemed county clerk, Miss Catherine Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, this is part of our statutory requirement that every 2 years we set Election Day polling places by June or July for the for the next 2-year cycle. So essentially, we are setting our Election Day polling places for 2022. So these will serve as the polling places for the June primary, the next November general, and then the following regular local election next in 2023.
Okay, thank you.
And Earl from the GIS office will give a presentation on determining the splits.
Esteemed Mr. Earl
Esteemed
White.
Mr. Earl Wright, yes.
Yes, sir. How are you, sir? Glad to see you.
Is that better? Yeah. Can we get the presentation started? There we go. So again, as per New Mexico statute, section 1-3-1, these precincts need to be divided basically because of the 750 votes that were cast by voters at these precincts at the last general election. There's also a provision that if the population is over 2,500 persons within a precinct, that we may need to split again. We will not know that until the 2020 census data is released, and that's supposedly coming up here in August. These precinct adjustments were made basically cooperatively between the Santa Fe County Clerk's Office, Bureau of Election staff, the GIS staff, and with the assistance of Research and Polling Incorporated. Research and Polling was hired by the Secretary of State to look at the data from the previous 2020 general election, essentially statewide, and to make the necessary adjustments to current precincts as per the statutory requirements. Research and Polling is the company that is contracted by the New Mexico Legislative Council Service to assist with legislative redistricting. And for your information, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we do have Brad Morrison and Michael Sharp should be on this WebEx, should be here virtually, should you have any questions once we get through this presentation. There are a total of 37 precincts that we need to make adjustments to. These precinct adjustments will not change any of the commission districts. They are needed prior to the redistricting efforts by the New Mexico legislature and perhaps by this body should, and other local public bodies, should the census data indicate that the population is out of balance and we need to redistrict. The Senate, House, and County Commission and all other district adjustments will not occur until after the release of the 2020 census data. And again, that's currently, the last report was August 16th, 2021. So we should be seeing that data hopefully in a couple of weeks. Any of these voting district adjustments will not actually take effect until January 1st, 2022. So they will not affect upcoming elections, the municipal elections. They'll only apply after January 1st, 2022. And again, these precincts are being modified because of the amount of people we had voting in the general elections. And again, as I noted before, further splits may be required if the census data reveals population in any given precinct over 2,500 persons. At this point in time, we currently have 154 precincts, and with your approval of these adjustments, we'll grow to 179 precincts. Here is the list of precincts that are being adjusted. There's essentially 5 precincts in District 1, 9 precincts in District 2, 6 precincts in District 3, 8 precincts in District 4, and 9 precincts in District 5, and that's where we get our total of 37. The new precincts begin at precinct number 155 and go sequentially up through number 179. Again, this is the general overview showing the districts. We have a few precincts down in the Edgewood area. Most of these are in our metropolitan, if you will, the Santa Fe urban area. And there's also precinct adjustments, which were previously approved by the commission in 2019, that we must resolve in order for the census data to be tabulated or to be correlate to these precinct boundaries so we can have proper data delivered to the legislature and to this and other local bodies for the population counts. Again, the bulk of these precincts are in the Santa Fe City area of vicinity, and we will just run through them here. These are sequentially by precinct number. There will be some combination slides. The first one is precinct 11, and it will be split to create precinct 155. And again, we exceeded the total vote count. It was 804, which is pretty well over the 750 required. The next map is the Edgewood area in District 1. There's 2 precincts involved here. Precinct 15 split into 156, Precinct 18 split into 157. And again, the vote tallies are there on each of these sheets for you.
Did you say that one was in District 1?
I'm sorry, District 3, that's a typo.
Okay, I was,
My
it does say
apologies.
District 1 on the map. Okay, no worries.
That's my bad. I'm glad you're paying attention, Mr. Chair. Absolutely my bad on that one. This one is District 1, which is Precinct 21, and being split to create new Precinct 158. Next slide is again a double split, or double precinct split, and this is Precinct 24 to create 159 and 33 to create 160. Next split is Precinct 37. This is totally within District 4, and this will create Precinct 161. Again, this is District 4 precinct. This is Precinct 44 in the South Capitol area, a split to create a new Precinct 162. Precinct 48, this is essentially the foothills and beyond to the reservoir, Santa Fe watershed, split to create a new Precinct 163. This next slide, this is actually a boundary adjustment, again, that was approved by the commission with BCC Resolution 2019-96. This actual adjustment and movement moves enough voters that the precinct doesn't require a split. And again, we are only 8 votes over the statutory requirement here. So this is an adjustment that was requested by the Census Bureau. And what we're doing is following an arroyo rather than the street in this location. And again, that's Precinct 50. But no need to create a new precinct. Precinct 52 is split to create a new Precinct 164. There is a boundary adjustment on the west side of this precinct as well. And this is typical. This happens every 10 years where Census Bureau makes an effort to improve their boundaries. The intention of that western boundary was always the rail line. It just wasn't in the actual physical location. So this adjustment is actually moving that to the proper location of the rail line as a boundary between precinct 51 and 52. Next slide is precinct 63, split to create precinct 165. And this was a significant split here. Precinct 70 is actually split to create three precincts total. So 2 new precincts numbering 166 and 167. And again, this was due to the large voter turnout in this area of just under 1,500, almost twice what's required by statute. Also split here was precinct 111 to create a new precinct 175. Clicker's not cooperating too well.
So what, Earl, this, Mr. Chair,
Commissioner, go ahead.
in this area, this obviously is due to growth. I mean,
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hanson, that is absolutely correct.
you know, because it was all 70, and now you're just splitting it into 3 in the last 10 years, right?
That is correct. Actually, 70, the original 70 was split into 111 and 112 previously. And even though 111 has enough voter turnout to require being split again, it had almost 1,000 votes there, 965 in the last general election.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Just to piggyback off Commissioner Hanson's question, our district boundaries still remain the same, even though if we're adding precincts, correct? Because I just want to make sure there's not other constituents that I need to make sure they know that I'm their commissioner. But I think that the actual district boundaries are remaining the same, and we're just adding additional precincts. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
So our next slide is a split of precinct 71. Again, this is totally internal to District 5, and this will create a new precinct 168. Come on. I'm having a hard time getting it to switch here. Okay, there we go. Again, this is showing 2 precincts, precinct 83 split to precinct 169, and precinct 95 to create new precinct 172. And these are in District 1, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hanson, did you have a question? Commissioner Hamilton? I thought, oh, we're looking the wrong, okay. I thought you had a question.
Next slide is again 2 precincts. This is precinct 86 to create a new precinct 170, and precinct 149 to create precinct 176. These are District 3 precincts. Come on. This is precinct 94. Again, this is the foothills area along Old Santa Fe Trail, and 94 is being split to create precinct 171. Next slide, Precinct 96 is again totally within District 5, and this creates Precinct 173. And this is a precinct split and an adjustment. We have actually two of these. One you've already seen that I mentioned with the rail line. This is actually splitting Precinct 109 to create a new Precinct 174. And this new Precinct 174, the boundary will move from Agua Fria Street to the Santa Fe River. And this coincides with or essentially makes the river a continuous boundary kind of through, not only through the city of Santa Fe, but also into unincorporated areas of the county. So there's a double action here. So this adjustment, again, was actually approved by the commission in 2019. This is Precinct 152 in the Las Campanas area, split to create Precinct 177. This is Precinct 31 and it's split to create a new Precinct 178. This split wasn't actually triggered by voter turnout, but it was done in conjunction with the clerk and ourselves looking at data and growth in this area. HomeWise has done several developments here, and it's also a very odd-shaped precinct. So we had requested that this be split. This is the proper time to do that. And the split occurs along Agua Fria and gets rid of this sort of Big Dipper-shaped precinct that we had. I can't get it to change. If Daniel can get me to the next slide. I have a dead battery.
You need a bigger hammer?
Maybe. Perhaps. There we go. This is also a precinct adjustment that was approved again in 2019. This is an adjustment that was requested by the Census Bureau, and again, we do these pretty much prior to every decennial census. The problem here is these precinct lines that were up in the top of the mountains here weren't actually ground features. And so this was moved to two drainages and essentially a ridge line to tie this together. Doesn't affect any voters, at least I don't think we have any campers registered to vote out there, but top of the mountains. This is a cluster of precincts in the College of Santa Fe and Siringo area. And again, all besides the split in Precinct 52, these adjustments, which I talked about, the rail line, the adjustment to precinct 50 to the Arroyo, and then that continuing adjustment into precinct 49 were adjustments that again were approved in 2019 by the commission. And again, we're following Arroyo rather than Alamosa Drive there. That's the bulk of this change. This is another adjustment that was approved in 2019, and this one again was needed. The previous precinct line that followed Ocate Drive and then came essentially southwest there actually bisected the elementary school, and this was adjustment to move that line to where it coincided with Herrera Drive. Next slide. I'm not sure if I'm doing that or Daniel is. There's a couple of slides here, because again, this is the Agua Fria area. We already talked about the split of Precinct 109 into 174. There are other boundary adjustments essentially to move Agua Fria, the precinct boundary from the Agua Fria Street to the river. And again, these are recommended for the Census Bureau, and it actually will help redistricting efforts not only by the legislature, but also other local public bodies. And it will, essentially, these were keep getting taken out of Precinct 80. But we run the risk, if we don't use the river and we use the street, we actually run the potential of dividing communities of interest here, which is something we want to avoid, and any legislative body wants to avoid when and if redistricting is needed. And again, these adjustments were approved by the commission in 2019. And again, these are Census Bureau requested adjustments. The next slide, because this one's a little hard to read, is just a repeat of that just shows clean boundaries here. There is also a split here of Precinct 140, and again, that's a request because it was such an odd-shaped precinct and we're seeing growth in that area. We thought it best to go ahead and split it now rather than doing that later. So 140 also creates a new precinct 179, and that's the last new precinct. And again, these are boundary adjustments there. Next slide. This is also a boundary adjustment approved in 2019. It's a rather large precinct, 129 and 139, so it's kind of hard to see. But again, this was a Census Bureau request to follow a drainage rather than an erroneous line that actually didn't exist on the ground. And the drainage actually connects to I-25, so this is a suitable boundary that the Census Bureau will accept. So again, it's a change that they had requested. Finally, we have a summary table of the precincts that were required to split because of voter turnout. The one at the very bottom, Precinct 31, is the one we split along Agua Fria. And then the next slide is a list of the precincts that we adjusted. Again, it did include 3 precincts that exceeded the 750 ballots in the last general election. So there's a combination of a split and adjustment here. And again, all of these adjustments were previously approved by the Commission in 2019 by Resolution 2019-96. So that's the end of the presentation, Commissioners. And again, the staff from Research and Polling is also available if you have some questions for them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wright, and great job. I know it's not easy, separating these precincts and trying to figure out how we're gonna split them up so that we have the required amount of voters in those areas, or not the overabundance. Commissioner Hanson, you had some questions?
Yeah, I seem to remember when I met with the clerk that there was this area, Camino Sierra Vista, and that there was that was being used as a dividing line, but I didn't see it, or did I miss it? near near St. Francis and Camino Sierra Vista. And I was questioning why the acequia was not used instead of Camino Sierra Vista, because that's kind of dividing a community. So can you tell me what slide that's on, or I must have missed it, or it's not in here? Okay, yeah. Where do you find the page numbers? Oh, I see them.
Oh, yeah, that would have been page 13. Let's see if I can. Daniel, I'm not sure you can get me back to page 13 on the presentation.
I don't know if this is actually it.
But one of the problems that we have in doing these is we have to use what are called the Census Bureau Edge file. And if that line is not present in the Edge file that the Census Bureau produces, and it's not continuous, and that's one of the things, these have to be continuous, because you can't really notice it here. But in Precinct 24, the fact that we're going down Avenida Cristobal Colon there, it actually makes a sharp right angle turn because that doesn't connect to the river. And it actually follows a path. So there's a very thin panhandle there. But that, unfortunately, is the nature of the Census Bureau data. We have to use their geometry in order to do this.
So what I find odd is that you can use arroyos, you can use rivers, but you can't use acequia.
The acequia has to actually be in the Edge file, and it has to be continuous. So a lot of the acequias in the city, if they pass under a road, that wouldn't be a continuous line.
Okay, so probably acequia madre passes under St. Francis there, but then it runs along most of the way. So, I mean, I guess I don't have any choice, but I know those residents are not going to be happy because you are cutting off a small group of people along the acequia, along those roads that go directly down from Camino Sierra Vista. And that is the acequia trail is there, which also could be used as, I mean, I would assume that, but I can't assume anything because they've made up these rules, that could be used as a divider. A trail that goes from, and the trail goes along the acequia madre. And it goes along the end, right at the back of Camino Sierra Vista, where you split 33 into 160.
So it's north or south of?
It's south of Camino Sierra. I mean, the way I'm looking at it, it's south. So the trail goes along the back end of those, where those roads kind of end, down to Baca.
Well, again, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Hanson, I have to review the Edge file to see if that was even, oops, sorry, getting a little echo. If that's there, but that's one of the difficulties. It has to be a continuous connected line in order to build essentially these census statistical areas, not only precincts, but also the blocks and the block groups, and then eventually up to the census tract level.
Yeah, so, I mean, I know the trail goes completely along the acequia there, and it does go over St. Francis, and it goes down to Baca. So maybe there wasn't anything there. I don't know. But if you would look, I would appreciate it.
That's one thing I can do. I can grab my laptop and take a quick peek and see what the Edge file actually showed. But it's one of the things the county also, and we've been pretty proactive about doing this, is we actually provide updates to the Census Bureau for new roads, for trails, and other things that can become edges. We did that a couple of years ago under the LUCA program, which is the local update of census addresses that occurs about 2 years before the census. But we have that opportunity essentially on an annual basis through the BAS program with the census, which that's the Boundary and Annexation Program. So we do take a look at that, and if we can determine that that feature is actually visible and continuous on the ground, it's a suggestion we can make to the Census Bureau to make that an edge.
Okay.
And to accept it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Any other questions from the board? Okay, it's a pleasure on the board on this.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Hamilton,
move to approve.
we have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton. Do I hear a second?
Second?
And a second from Commissioner Hughes.
I do have a quick
under
question under
comment?
discussion. If we move to approve most of these, because this has, I assume, has to move forward, is there the possibility for future amendments to address like the questions that were just being asked? Or is there a very limited time frame for making these kinds of changes that then have to then move forward?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hamilton, I would actually defer to Michael Sharp if he's on the line to answer that question.
Mr. Sharp, are you on the WebEx?
Hello, this is Michael Sharp.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I think the question was, what's the timeline for making possible changes? And by the way, I'm trying to deal with the echo in the phone here, so I'll try to get you a good answer. Ideally, we make the changes now, and so that these precinct adjustments can be put into databases necessary to accomplish redistricting for the state, for the county, and the various other local entities. It is possible that you could make a change or two later, but the more you can do now, the better, just because we want to try to get all the information ready prior to the release of the census data in the middle of August.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hanson?
So my main concern is that the constituents of this area are very active. I know this is a city, but this is a very active area, and my fear is that 33 could easily, if the overpopulation or there's a population issue and we have to redistrict, 33 could get split from 160. You know, at the moment it looks perfectly fine, and Cerrillos is a normal road to use in St. Francis. But if there is, you know, they need 750 people and they decide, oh, well, I'm going to take precinct 33 and put that in Senator Worth's district instead of Senator Rodriguez, then you're splitting a neighborhood. And you're taking a small section of a neighborhood that has a strong identity in that area. And so that is my concern.
Okay, Commissioner Hsu, so I think to be clear, Commissioner Hanson, is your concern is how it will be the districts will work on the legislative side for the state, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the legislative, I mean, you know, it could turn out that all of a sudden District or could end up with Precinct 33. And then you're dividing this neighborhood that is an old neighborhood. You know, it is not, it doesn't have a lot of growth in there. I mean, because it's pretty dense in that area. And where District 2 is written across is basically a large plume of that P&M created when it has nitrates, and it's affecting this neighborhood. And you know, I just worry about these residents not having representation when they really belong in 160. Or they, you know, it's just a difficult split. You know, it's only F that they get moved out of someone's district. I mean, if they got moved into District 4, I'm sure that Commissioner Hamilton and I would work on this spill and this plume together. But if they get moved out in a legislative district, you know, I think these people would be unhappy. And actually, I don't think I know, but they've already told me, because I talked to some of them about this.
There was a corollary question.
Commissioner Hamilton, you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Is it possible, I mean, the reason I asked the question about timing and the possibility for further adjustments was because of this issue. It's the only issue really that's been brought up for all of these adjustments. Is it possible to approve all of them, but this one be, you know, Earl, for example, you said you could go look on and see if there is another legitimate line that could be used. You just didn't know because you have to go, you know, check it out. So procedurally, I mean, we need to move this forward. Most of them are fine. Is it possible to pull this one piece out?
Can we look at just, Earl, could we look at the edge lines that exist now to see if there are lines that are available?
Yeah, I'm actually
Mr.
remoted
Chair,
in.
Commissioners.
I can check that real quick, and also Brad Morrison could take a look from Research and Polling. He could probably answers. The problem is, by state law, Precinct 33 had too many voters in it. It must be split, either north, south, east, west, somehow.
I understand.
In order to comply with state law, Precinct 33 must be split. And I mean, I understand Commissioner Hansen's question. However, that's one of the actions in redistricting, and not to give legal advice, but the policies of redistricting, the courts are very good about upholding this, is not allowing community of interest to be split. And just historically, the New Mexico legislature, it's always been settled by the courts for the last 20 years. The legislature actually wasn't able to come up with redistricting plans, and the state districts have actually been settled by the courts for the last 20 years, for the last 2 cycles.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is
Matt,
Michael Sharp.
Did you have something to add?
Mr. Chair, I was just going to suggest that we just take a pause on this item, let Earl go look at all that. We could do other business that's on the agenda and come back to it.
Okay, and I know there was
Mr.
somebody
Chair?
online that was going to make a comment. Can you state your name for the record, sir?
Sure, this is Michael Sharp with Research and Polling.
Go ahead, Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to answer or shed some light on one of the reasons why the acequia was not used for the split, and that the split was along Camino Sierra instead. One of the challenges with splitting the precincts is that the line we choose should result in a couple precincts that have a decent population on each side. And for Precinct 33 pre-split, if you split along the acequia, then you're only left with less than 50 people south of the Acequia, between the Acequia and Cerrillos. And the remaining precinct has 95, roughly, % of the population. In the 2020 election, there were 802 votes cast. And so if you split this precinct along the Acequia, I think that the portion north of the Acequia would still end up with more than 750 votes cast. So the reason for the split along the street and not the Acequia is to balance out the population a little bit better.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sharp. So, while Mr. Wright is pulling up additional information, we're going to move on to a different item, and we'll go ahead and come back to this one. Commissioner Hanson, do you have something else to add?
Mr. Chair, I will basically allow this to go forward, but I know I'm going to hear about it.
Okay, so is that a motion?
I mean, because Mr. Wright basically said that they did not want to use the trail, and I know exactly what he's talking about in the amount of people that are in this district.
You're right, though. I remember the motion.
You know, I mean, I know that if there's 823 and they're splitting it along Camino Sierra Vista, the now Precinct 33 has probably 50 or, you know, a couple hundred people in it, and Precinct 160 has the majority of the people in it.
No, I have a second one. I have questions too, though.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hanson, and I appreciate those valid concerns. And we do have a motion in a second. Maybe our stenographer can tell me who the motion was. Commissioner Hamilton, second? Oh, Commissioner Hughes? Perfect, thank you.
Looks like.
So we do have a motion in a second, so we need to vote on the item. Anything else under discussion, Commissioner Hanson?
It looks like Earl has some information, and I think that maybe Commissioner Garcia has some questions also.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Wright.
Well, and again, as Michael had addressed, Michael Sharp, in pulling it up, there is an edge there, but essentially it puts the Indian school in one precinct and the neighborhood in its own precinct. And that would, again, that was the point that that Mr. Sharp had made. It doesn't actually achieve the goal of we're going to have to split it again anyway at the next general election if we don't actually move population. And that's a problem. There's probably only a handful of voters that are actually be registered in what would be, there is an edge there, but it, again, essentially, as Commissioner Hanson said, runs through the District 2 line, but there'd basically be no population south of that line. And we, again, and that's the beauty of this, is there is high voter turnout there. The community does care. And that's one of the reasons why it exceeded the threshold for voting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wright. Commissioner Garcia, did you have an additional comment, question?
No, Mr. Chair, I see where Commissioner Hanson's coming from, and you know, if you look at page 11, which is actually in the southern part of the county, which is I-40 area, 344 is actually the existing boundary of the two different precincts, 156 and 157. So, Earl, let me ask you a question. So this, at this moment in time, does not affect, and can it or not affect legislative boundaries?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Garcia, no, these boundaries don't take effect until January 1st, 2022. So the legislature and any bodies that need to will actually use these as the building blocks for the new districts. So essentially the districts will be reconstituted statewide as far as state senate and state representative.
Mr. Chair, so Earl, so if these get approved tonight, they will not take effect till January of 2022. And so whenever the state legislature actually adjusts their boundaries, Senate and state representatives, they will go off of precinct numbers, or they will go off of population, or both?
the districts have to be built. So what the first data file that the Census Bureau releases is this reapportionment data, which is population by precinct, and also an ethnic breakdown. And again, research and polling is probably better qualified to answer this than myself, but they have to use those precincts in order, they become the building blocks. So they aggregate precincts, and the total population between districts must be in plus or minus 5% to ensure one person, one vote, statewide, countywide, citywide, nationally. Well, the reapportionment for Congress has already occurred. That was the actual first announcement.
So, Mr. Chair, Errol, our state delegation is actually going to go off of population base, not actually. No. So let's take, for example, let's look at page 11. So 11 is actually the most southwestern part of the county, which is the entire Edgewood municipality or that area. That blue line there that goes north to south there is actually State Road 344, then it actually jogs to the right, then it goes up, and then it goes into the San Pedro Neighborhood Association. So this, a good example is the San Pedro Neighborhood Association. Now, well, they're not going to be split. Let's see. So if you have a state senator that is actually on the east side of 344 and another state senator on the west side of 344, can that state Senate adjustment committee that they're actually organizing right now with the state legislature, they have the ability to say, well, now I want, and if they have the votes to do so, I would like my boundary to be on the west side of 344 now, provided that I need so many voters and I'm going to absorb, let's just say, entire precinct 157. Could they do that?
Yes, Chairman and Commissioner Garcia. Again, the aggregation of the precincts and the population within those precincts as of the 2020 census has to be for the entire district plus or minus 5% of the population. So
as you know, we know, Senator Phil Garrigo, now Senator Senator Liz Stefanik, in reality, their district goes all the way pretty much from Galisteo all the way down to Willard, way down in there where you can't even pretty much take a straight route down to Willard unless you go through farmland, through this area, through this county road, down up this interstate. And that's just a good example as into their boundary. Senator Stefanik's boundary goes all the way down south. So whatever the state legislature actually creates their boundaries, they're going to go by the precinct numbers that we created here tonight.
yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Garcia, that's the reason for doing this, is the census is going to populate these boundaries with the census counts. So the actual head counts that they did are going into this geometry, if you will, the geometry of this precinct. And so that these jigsaw puzzles statewide, and that's why former Senator Griego and Senator Stefanik's district is so large. It's basically a low-density district. It has the same population as, for instance, Senator Rodriguez's district, roughly, but Senator Rodriguez's district is much more populous and dense in terms of population.
I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I'm just very interested as into how these numbers can affect our Santa Fe delegation, or whether they will or whether they won't. whenever they do bring their committee forward, which it's in the process of evolving. And another thing that I have, Mr. Chair, in regards to the census data hasn't even been completed yet. So how can the census data actually get us the figures, numbers, population, if they haven't completed their count yet?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, it actually, this data will be released in about 3 weeks from the actual 2020. And again, we know, I think we've all understood the issues that the 2020 decennial census had with the pandemic. And that's one of, this data normally would have been released back in December, I believe. So the count is as good as we're going to get it nationwide, I think. And it's going to be those actual real numbers, real head count is going to go into these building blocks so that we can assure one person, one vote, not only countywide, but nationwide.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can definitely see how Commissioner Hanson can visualize where we can split up a community. On another note, we're splitting up my major 2 committees due to some communications by definitely our new county clerk our new county clerk is in the middle of this, but as into we're splitting up Cerritos and Madrid because we can't get facility to vote at. That's a little bit different than what Commissioner Hanson's arriving at, and I certainly understand all that. I'm just trying to look at the bigger picture, not get to the mountain. We need to get over the mountain, and what happens when you get over the mountain. That's kind of, I'm just trying to look at the larger picture of it as into how it does and may or does not affect splitting up a community by an acequia that's there, or do you tell the people, well, you still can go vote anywhere in the entire county you wanted, and but I'm just trying to play all this out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Any other questions or comments? And like I said, we do have a motion and a second at this point. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, can we get a resolution number?
The resolution number is 2021-071. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 5H. And this is a request approval to utilize the Cooperative Educational Services contract for the purchase of construction services for the Agua Fria sewer line project. And second, to delegate signature authority to the county manager to negotiate and execute the final terms and conditions of the contract and sign all purchase orders. From the purchasing division, we have Mr. Bill Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, the item that's before you is to request approval to utilize an existing contract. What this is doing pursuant to Ordinance 2012-5, the use of any contract in excess amount of $250,000 requires board approval without going through a competitive process. So the CES contracts have they've competed these contracts for construction and other items. And so it was competed, but the county did not compete the solicitation. But pursuant to the ordinance, we're requesting for this project, the Agua Fria wastewater infrastructure installation, to expedite the construction phase, to improve the infrastructure. We feel that it would be in the best interest. I've made a determination it'd be in the best interest and advantageous to the county to utilize the existing contract. It allows us to negotiate. With the selected contractor, and the likelihood of change orders is considerably reduced if any change orders come up. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions. Any project-specific questions? Of course, Director Snyder is here and Director Giron from Public Works. That's the procurement side of it. So it's allowed also by the procurement code to use existing contracts pursuant to 13-1-129. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Are there any additional questions from the commission? Commissioner Garcia, and then I'll go to Commissioner Hanson. Or go ahead first, Commissioner Hanson, and then I'll go.
Thank you very much. Thank you, County Manager. Thank you, Mr. Snyder, Mr. Giron, and Bill Taylor. I would like to make a motion to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Hanson. Do I hear a second? And a second from Commissioner Hamilton. Under discussion, did you have any comments, Commissioner Garcia?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I think this is actually very good, great to, as you said, expedite projects, because a couple of things that I'm interested in is where do the administrative costs come for these types of projects? I'm all for these projects. And because I do have some projects that I know my team over here is working on here to the left, and we're going to actually hopefully get those done. And if our staff cannot perform the construction of those projects, and we do have the design, then I would like to see how we can go out for CES contracts as well for those type of projects that we're working out. One of the other things this says for construction services, is this actually for design services as well? Or just
Mr. Chair,
construction
Commissioner Garcia, the design will be completed. We're estimating, we're expecting the final design by the end of July 31st. And so this is to use this for the construction services, to
And
install the infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Taylor, so what's the maximum amount we can contract with CES for construction?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, the engineer's estimated probable cost for construction is a little over 1.1 million. There will be a 1.25% adjustment factor or fee for using CES administrative costs to procure the service, to do the procurement, which they've done and established, so that's what we pay for. It's a minor fee that we pay for to utilize the CES as a participating entity.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Taylor, what's the workload that CES has? Do we know that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair and Commissioner, the workload?
I guess where I'm going with this, if we're going to utilize, Mr. Chair, if we're going to utilize CES, I think this is great.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, I think what you're getting to, Commissioner Garcia, is they've actually done the procurement. It's done. It's completed. They have a list of contractors that we can select from to show them the design, discuss with them, have a site visit, a meeting to go over the specifications and all that. So the workload is actually, would be the contractor that we would select to do the work. We're anticipating utilizing one of those CES contractors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And we'll get that from them. That's going to be part of the discussion, Mr. Chair and Commissioner, as far as their capacity and capability to do the job.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So we do have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Next, we're going on to 6A, and this is a presentation regarding the Santa Fe County Fair. Community Service Department, we have Ms. Anna War.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am Anna War from the Community Services Department, Senior and Community Relations Division. And I am here with our 2021 Fair Board Chairwoman, Monica Lurie, because we are actually going to have an in-person county fair this year. As you all know, last year with the pandemic, we were unable to have a regular fair, so we did things virtually. Our virtual auction was quite successful last year. However, the Fair Board has been working very hard this year on planning an in-person fair, along with making sure that we are still going to be complying with CDC guidelines and having safety procedures and things like that. We won't be doing things like the salsa contest, the chili contest, watermelon eating contest, just to make sure we are safe. I'd like to introduce Monica Laurie, and as I hand you out a couple of things, she's going to let you know all that we have planned for this year's fair.
Good afternoon, Commission. So this year we are going to be doing an in-person fair. We set our schedule basically as we have in the past for our in-person fairs. We are going to have check-ins starting on Tuesday with the animals. Our shows will start on Wednesday and follow through on Thursday, and we will have a live auction on Friday. We will be serving a meal for our buyers, which we have already contracted with a, I think it was Whole Hog this year. So they will be there, and we will be serving the food for them, and then moving on from there to the live auction. We are taking precautions, and we will have all of the CDC regulations in place. We will have COVID safe practices going, hand sanitizers, masks, and the such. And then Saturday, we plan on having a family day, which we welcome the community to come out. We will have some kids out there to talk about their projects and how everything works, and we'll also have some healthy living ambassadors out there to talk about the program that they work with. And then animals will be released on Sunday. So we welcome everybody to come out to the fair.
Okay, great. It's really wonderful to hear that we're actually going to be in person this year. I know that you guys worked very hard last year to make things happen for the kids, and I remember getting a lot of the cards, and actually I was just reading some a few days ago that I had in my glove box of my vehicle. So, you know, just really appreciative. I mean, these kids look forward to this fair every year, and you guys do such a great job. And, you know, I was involved with a fair with my son, and I spent some time talking to Miss Monica Lurie, you know, and her husband, and her daughter I know now is already in her early 20s, probably 21, I would say, but she was a great shooter, and she enjoyed a lot of the activities that they had. And so, you know, it's just such a great program that we have to build up our youth and work with them. So I really appreciate everything that you guys do, and so I'm excited for this year. So it's going to be one of those things where it seems like it's been forever that we've all been together at the fair, but, you know, it's only been a year, but it still seems like it's been a long time. So I'm really excited to see that in person. Any other comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Garcia?
Mr. Chair, thank you, staff, for assisting our county fair board, as well as all the individuals, especially the kids that I got letters from last year, for thanking the commission for their participation, which they raised animals in the last past year. It was very challenging for us to work with their county fair board, and nonetheless, the entire fair actually did a really excellent job as you do when it came for bidding of for the auction. I never thought I'd see Monica actually pushing a pig around or holding a chicken or a rabbit, but nonetheless, thank you for your volunteer services that you and your husband and your family and all the board members do for the county fair. Very good job. One of the questions I have is in regards to the auction and the bidders for the auction. Do we actually send out a list to individuals who actually have attended the fair for many years? I can remember when we first had 3 campers, we actually put the pedestals for 6 campers. Now I think we can't even sell a space for an RV out there, which is great because people come from the north, the south, and, you know, I'm sure throughout the county and have a good weekend, a good week there. And so just if we could make sure that the bidders still attend and still go there and put up their RVs, which is, they're always welcome there, and it's great to walk through there and get to see some individuals that have been there going to the fair forever. Mr. Thornton, a few other people where we purchased the Thornton Ranch from, Ms. Gene Thornton, his brother, and all of the friends, the Anayas, ex-commissioner Anayas, they actually go to the fair a lot. They're brothers. A lot of people from the southern part of the county, even from Moriarty, come up. And one other great thing is a lot of these kids, they raise their animals for show animals. And this year, I think a week and a half ago, the governor's office and the state fair board announced that they're going to have a full live fair this year. So that actually helps the children go take their animals to the state fair. Because when I was a kid, I used to love to go to the state fair, and the red animal barn's still there. And I think it might be the same pig that she's still there, but nonetheless, it's actually a very big pig there with a lot of piglets, chickens, roosters. And just thank you for your volunteer work, Monica. Appreciate you and your, like I said, your entire team out there. Another thing, Anna, have we actually procured everything from the belt buckles to anything we're going to give away to what we're doing to the catering to the big tent out there?
Commissioner Garcia, we no longer get a tent because we do have the buyer's lunch under the portal. And I did want to give a shout out to our Public Works Department. They have been out there last week and this week in getting the grounds ready. I was out there this morning with them and getting display cases moved in, tables moved in. We did get POs for all of our buckles, ribbons, plaques. The new plaques are very nice with the new Santa Fe County logo. Monica showed me the picture because they did come in. We have even had to procure a company to remove prairie dogs to ensure the safety of those campers moving in. We have a lot of prairie dogs that came in over the pandemic, so the contractor we hired is actually safely removing them. They catch them and they actually relocate them. So there is a lot of those, and then Public Works will be working on the grounds to make sure there's not the big giant holes so that we don't have any animals that get caught in a hole or any of our constituents that attend the fair or any of our fair families. So yes, we have procured everything that we need.
Thank you for that. I remember I kind of sat in Anna's shoes for overseeing the fair and working with staff, and a lot of individuals for the prairie dogs. I remember there was a lady, I think, broke her leg because she fell in the prairie dog hole. I remember there was a horse that actually broke its, I forget what it broke, but as long as we're working with the individuals with the prairie dogs, and as long as the fair is actually safe, I thought during the pandemic that the prairie dogs would actually go in isolation, but I guess they didn't go in isolation. No? So just thank you for what you guys do for the fair, and I think the fair is great. It's actually a great place to go, and this flies by, but thank you for all you do. Please thank all your volunteers, who I'm sure a few of us will be out there, and anywhere from the county commission here for approving the budget for the fair for stuff that we didn't, for unforeseen items such as the prairie dogs. I know we did do the pig covers because I did talk with Monica a week and a half ago, and that is actually whenever you walk your pig for show, you're standing in the sun. So we actually, Commissioner Naya was very instrumental, and the entire commission obviously was instrumental in getting the pig covered, the pig lane is what it's called, the pig lane covered up. And also I believe there's a new kind of tarp on the east end of the big barn, show barn. I know the wind used to come through there and just howl through there, and it was kind of, when the rain came, so on and so forth. But thank you all once again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Hanson?
I love the poster. I'm holding it up so people can see it. I love that there's a cow. Mostly, I love that there's pollinators on it. Just had to say that. So I'm very happy to see the colors. I think it looks really, it's a very nice poster. Thank you. I'll put it up in my office. And I love the county fair. It's definitely down home and a great event in Santa Fe County. So I suggest that people take the opportunity to go and see what our kids are doing. So the 4-H is wonderful, and good luck with the auction. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Hughes?
Oh, I just wanted to say, when I told my wife we were having a presentation on the county fair, she reminded me we hadn't been in a few years, so we're definitely looking forward to going this year. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are we gonna have a hiding contest?
No, sir.
Okay, well, once again, I want to thank you both for being here today, and great job tell Mike and Marisa that I said hello.
Well, thank you so
Alrighty.
much.
Also,
Okay, so we, go ahead, Commissioner Garcia.
one last thing, please invite our local legislative delegation. I know in the past, Representative Jim Churrill has been very instrumental in the fair. And, you know, the fair is just not about animals. The Commissioner Roybal, his son, actually, he built a bumper, and he took first prize, and he actually went down to the New Mexico State Fair, and I believe he took first prize also in welding a bumper and building a bumper for his vehicle. Quilts. There's a lot of stuff out there that, other than just animals, but once again, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. And yeah, my son definitely had a wonderful experience being part of the 4-H, and he had a great time, you know, and I've got a 4-year-old now, so you'll be seeing me again here soon. Thank you.
Well, we can't wait.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go on to item number 7, and this is matters of public concern. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the commission? Tessa, Joe, do we have anybody online? I think that we had 2 people that had signed up to address the commission. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, I don't have anyone who's signed up to address the commission, but they can unmute themselves, or if they are call-ins, they can select *6.
Okay, so if you are online and you would like to address the commission, please unmute yourself. You would have to hit *7 if you're a call-in, and then if not, you can hit unmute on your computer. And please state your name for the record and be sworn in by our county clerk. Or actually, we don't need swearing in for that, but just state your name for the record. And Tessa, I think that we had a Marianne Stickler that was online. Marianne, are you online still? Did you still want to address the commission? Okay, can you see her online, Tessa Jo?
Mr. Chair, no, I cannot see her online unless she is call-in user number 5, but that call-in user is unmuted. I don't believe she's with us any longer.
Mr. Chair, Tessa, can you speak a little closer into the mic just so everybody could hear you, because your sound a little distorted. Thank you.
Sorry about that. No, I do not believe she's online.
Okay. So hearing nobody coming forward for matters of public concern, I'm going to go ahead and close item number 7 and move on to item number 8, matters from the county manager. We'll have 8A, which is a COVID-19 update, 8B, which is miscellaneous updates, and I think we're gonna, so we'll go to Manager Miller here in just a minute. Okay, so we're on item number 8A and 8B, which is the COVID-19 updates and miscellaneous updates from our county manager, Ms. Catherine Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Sorry, I was getting clarification on something. So just for our COVID updates, Santa Fe County continues to do well with vaccinations, and currently we have the 4th highest rate of vaccinations in the state of New Mexico, with 82.5% partially vaccinated and 73.9% fully vaccinated. Also, we're working with the city on sending out kind of a letter to the community from a bunch of community leaders to encourage people who have not gotten vaccinated to get vaccinated. And Santa Fe County was going to participate with that. That was an initiative by the mayor, who is has community meetings that he's had since the beginning of the pandemic, and that was a recommendation out of a lot of the leaders from different organizations within Santa Fe County. New Mexico rates are also doing pretty well nationally. Percent of residents partially vaccinated is 61% and fully vaccinated 55.4%. Connect, we still have our healthcare assistance program navigators assisting individuals. We had 12 more this week and followed up with 48 others to date. So we have 3,420 self-initiated assistance requests that have been submitted through our Connect Hub. Public awareness, we continue to distribute materials on vaccination and mask use policy in the county offices, as well as billboards are up encouraging vaccinations, and individuals that if they do get vaccinated, hopefully they can unmask. Obviously, with the Delta variant, there's starting to come out new recommendations from the CDC, so we're paying close attention to that as to whether we need to make any changes in our county policies. We're also continuing small venue vaccination events throughout the county at our fire stations, community centers. We've been using the mobile vaccination unit, and we have upcoming events in La Cienega, Madrid, and the county fair. Also, we're working on reopening the senior centers through the senior services program, and we have a plan, but we're waiting on, the staff is waiting on final approval from legal to make sure that we're doing that in coordination with the guidelines provided by the state. And we hope to start serving congregate meals in our senior centers to those who have been vaccinated. We're also working, Public Works is ensuring that facilities are clean and safe. And then we will continue home-delivered meals for unvaccinated seniors or those who cannot make it to congregate meals and be vaccinated. All of our community centers are open for business, and we are tentatively targeting the date of August 2nd as the formal reopening date of all the centers. And then just a reminder that the La Sala kickoff for Phase 2 Crisis Services in the Living Room model will be kicked off this Thursday, July 29th at 2 p.m. at the La Sala Center, which is located at 2052 Galisteo. And we will have several speakers there from the Human Services Department and of the state, New Mexico Human Services Department, District Court, River Valley, New Mexico Solutions, and others. And we're expecting a pretty large turnout for this event, and even have participants coming from out of state to view the center. That's all on COVID.
If you could.
Did I lose my quorum?
No, yes, you just lost the quorum. I was all nervous about it, and Commissioner Hanson came back in, and then here, okay, we're back good, so.
Okay, I'll be really quick. Then.
Yeah, they move around real fast.
Also, the Board of County Commissioners approved in the final budget for fiscal year 2022 increases to our lowest paid workers. So we have to date been 62 employees that have received increases effective this current pay period of 41 employees received $1, 10 employees received between 50 and 99 cents, and 11 employees received between 12 and 49 cents. That's based upon bringing their rate up if they were less than $14 to 14 minimum, and then those in between 14 and $15, a rate increase to $15. So we, going forward, will not be hiring anybody at the county for less than $14, and hopefully by the end of the fiscal year, not for less than $15 an hour plus benefits. Also, in our fire operations, we have 6 Black Canyon Hand Crew members in collaboration with the Santa Fe City Fire Department Wildland Team that are being deployed to Point, Idaho for a fire. It's a 14-day deployment and with an option to extend for 21 days. We also had 3 paramedics that graduated from the UNM School of Medicine. They were our firefighters, Ledlow, Lovato, and Bob, and they have just received their certification and been promoted to paramedics. Also, Captain Garcia graduated from the Naval Postgraduate School Center for Homeland Defense and Security Emergence Program. It's a 6-month program. And our cadet class will graduate 4 EMTs, which is 1 paramedic and 3 basics at the end of the month. And then the 6 remaining cadets will graduate in mid to late October after they finish their EMT basic course. Our total cadet training time frame is about 4 months. And then just one more reminder in case all of you are up bright and early on Thursday morning at 5:30 a.m. The Good Morning America is doing a live segment on the plaza. They'll be, I believe they're already out. Some of the producers are out here looking in advance to shoot pre-recorded segments in and around the plaza and the county, and they do request that people be there for a live audience. Signs are encouraged the morning of the live segment at 5:30 a.m. on the plaza, and also they are requesting that everyone in attendance be vaccinated, and if not vaccinated, to wear a mask and keep distance from other people. And those are all of my updates. I stand for questions if you have any questions.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Does anybody have any questions?
Who's going to be there at 5:30 in the morning?
You going to be there? Cool.
Okay, good.
I'm impressed.
Do you want me to take a specific sign?
Are you going to pick me up? Is that what you said? Thank you, Commissioner.
Thursday, the 29th. So, is our esteemed chair coming back to? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. So that concludes item number 8 and 8B. Next, we're on to item number 9A, which this is Commissioner's issues, comments, including but not limited to constituent concerns and recognitions, requests for updates on future presentations, and these are all non-action items. Is there anybody from the commission that would like to make an announcement? Commissioner Hanson, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to report that I have been appointed a vice chair of the Arts and Culture Committee at NACO, and I have also been appointed or continue my service on the Rural Action Caucus, which I think are both very important events. I want to recognize Alice Ladd for her 100th birthday that I celebrated on Sunday with her. She is an amazing woman, very lucid, and we had a wonderful party at the Commons for her, so happy birthday, Alice. I attended the Las Campanas Water Co-op, and they have new members, and they're very active, so I'm looking forward to seeing their more participation at the Buckman direct diversion. And they have initiated an Eye on Water within Las Campanas, which I think is great, and they are working on that. And I want to share a little story about the employee picnic. I was like so moved by this that one of our county employees came up to me and showed me his vaccination card and told me he got vaccinated because he liked me. I was like so moved. So one person at a time, we all need to get vaccinated as soon as we can. The Delta variant is very serious, and I was very moved by that. And then one of the more exciting things that happened is last Friday I was invited by Senator Heinrich and Secretary of Interior Deb Haaland out to the Sabanino Wilderness for a ribbon cutting of additional 10,000 acres that have been donated by the Trust for Public Land. And it was a really, it was a pretty small event, but it was really meaningful. And the Sabanino Wilderness is out past, out west or out east of Las Vegas, New Mexico, and it is really incredibly beautiful. It is a canyon land, and it is out on the eastern side, and BLM was there because they will now be the people overseeing this. And for many, many years, the Sabanino Wilderness was landlocked, and you couldn't even go to it. And then in 2017, the first access was achieved through Senator Heinrich. This has been one of his main projects. And then now with this second 10,000 acres donation, there'll be another public access. And as I know Commissioner Hughes loves to hike, this would be a beautiful land to hike on. Oh, yay. So I just wanted to share that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. And yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the county picnic. It was great to be there and see staff, and, you know, just another way of appreciating our staff here at Santa Fe County for their hard work and dedication. It was a great event. A lot of employees were there, and they were playing basketball, throwing horseshoes, you know, having a good time. Volleyball, I think I saw. So it was really neat to see everybody together. You know, sort of one big county family. So I appreciate that, and congratulations to you, Commissioner Hanson, for being appointed as the vice chair. You know, congratulations. I did watch your presentation on the building, on this building, actually, this facility, and it was really well done, so congratulations. I'm sure you had staff that helped that as well, so kudos to staff. Great job.
Yeah, kudos to Daniel for all his hard work on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Hamilton, did you have any announcements? Or Commissioner Hughes, go ahead. Sorry, sir.
Whichever order. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just have a few things, and I'm glad to hear the Savanosa Wilderness is expanding. I did have the opportunity to hike there a few years ago down in that canyon, and it is very pretty and different from the other wilderness areas in New Mexico. I also wanted to just thank the Public Works Department and our road crews and Ryan Ward and Ivan Trujillo especially for responding quickly to all the floods in District 5, and I assume they were responding to floods in the other districts as well, but El Dorado area in particular has been rained on more than in many, many years, and I think it's my wife's fault because she's been praying for rain for like 3 years, and now I got to get her to start praying for it to stop. No, not really, but just come down more gently, perhaps. August 4th, Commissioner Hamilton and I will be sponsoring, along with Chief Martin Vigil, a town hall on nuclear waste transport concerns brought up by the 285 Coalition, and that'll be at the Arroyo Hondo Fire Station on August 4th at 6 o'clock. And then I wanted to mention that I did attend the meeting of the Ethics Board last week, and I think it was mentioned a little bit earlier, they're going to work on the ethics resolution and try and get that to us, I believe, by September, the end of September, the ethics ordinance updated. And it's been updated like about 4 times, but never actually passed. So I'm hoping this time we can pass it and cross that off our list. And finally, just to mention that the reuse center at the El Dorado transfer station is going to reopen hopefully next Tuesday, and everybody in my district that use that transfer center seem to be very excited about that. So thanks again to the Public Works for working with the community on that project. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes, and we appreciate your comments, and also thank you for recognizing the hard workers that we have in Public Works that have been dealing with a lot of issues with flooding and things of that concern. I know that I've had a lot of constituents reaching out about weeds and Chinese elms that are growing into the easements that we have, our county roads, and so it's something that I think we need to look at. I think that if we can in the future try and figure out a way to have funds that kind of overlap into the new year, because our fiscal year ends in July, and unfortunately that's when we have the most growth and rain, and a lot of times that's when we have a lot of calls, and we're kind of put in a situation where we can't take care of those issues right away because we don't have, we're in transition for funding, and so it's something that I'd like to see if we can figure out how we can put some funds aside so that we can overlap when we have the end of our fiscal year, so we can take care of those issues. So it was something that I did want to mention, because I think it's important to try and figure out how we can overlap our fiscal year when it ends, so that we can take care of those issues when we do have these Chinese elms and weeds that grow into our easements. And I just huge thank you to Mr. Hiron for his department and taking care of our roads. There's been some pretty bad or significant rainstorms that have caused some issues in our communities, and I know that sometimes we try and patch these and we do it right away, but unfortunately then when it rains again we have the same issue that comes up. So I do want to thank those staff for being out there and doing that right away. Thank you to Mr. Chang, and also that he seems like he's really responsive when it comes to issues like that. So thank you, Richard. We appreciate that. Next, I'm going to go on to, or actually, I want to see if we have any other commissioners. Commissioner Hamilton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, I want to thank Commissioner Hughes for mentioning the August 4th Town Hall. And because I don't know if I missed it, I just wanted to make sure that that everybody knows it's at the Hondo Fire Station 2, because there are two of them, and that's the big one right off the highway, catty corner from Cafe Fina. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was the following Saturday. So it's the first Saturday of August, August 7th, also at Hondo Fire Station 2, will be the next Coffee with the Commish for District 4 from 9 to 11. So this one's in person after a year and a half almost. So everybody come out and tell me what's good and tell me what's bad, and I'll have coffee there.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. I'm going to go to Commissioner Hansen, and then I'll go to Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you. And on that note, this is the last Saturday of the month, and I will be having my coffee and tea under the trees at Reunity Resources, 10 to noon. Come out to the farm stand, buy some veggies, buy your breakfast. We can all have breakfast and coffee and tea together under the trees. It's beautiful. The farm is just exploding with wonderful vegetables, and so I look forward to seeing you and hearing your issues in District 2. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hansen. Absolutely, Commissioner Hamilton.
Yeah, I'm with regard to the rain, while I'm really, really sorry it's difficult to have the flooding and it presents problems, I have to say that I have some cabbages in my garden that look like Seymour from Little Shop of Horrors. So the rain has at least some good things going on.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to thank New Mexico Wild, with Director Garrett Venneklassen, actually had a community pickup day, trash pickup day there near the Caja del Rio shooting range area. And there was about 25, 30 people who showed up there. Thank you for all the volunteers who showed up there. Thank you, Public Works, for getting a trash container out there. We'll need to talk about a couple other little things next time, which is fine, but appreciate that. Also, I did talk with him about maybe we can have this major coordination through our 3 or 4 different agencies next time, then they're totally amenable to that.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other comments from commissioners? Okay, so we're gonna move on to our next item, which this is item number 9B, and this is other elected officials, issues, comments, including but not limited to constituent concerns and recognitions and requests for updates for future presentation. And I know right now we have Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have some updates. So we have started, because we are back out and the state is open, we're back and rebooting our voter outreach program. So today my staff was at the Youth Summit sponsored by Representative Tara Lujan and with Michelle Lujan-Grisham and Howie Morales, talking to young people about voting, the fact they can pre-register and serve as student poll workers. Needless to say, that position in our office, the voter outreach coordinator, is back out, and you can apply this week or next week if you are interested in talking to voters and reaching out to constituents. We are also hiring a position which is the poll worker coordinator position, which is one where you coordinate all of our poll workers, because we have over 200 poll workers every election, and it's an important position. So we do have an election that's coming up, the regular local election. Voting starts October 4th, and the election is November 2nd. What's on the ballot are City of Santa Fe positions, Town of Edgewood, Community College Board, School Board positions. And if you're interested in knowing or possibly running for those positions, you can find out more on the clerk's website, and the declaration of candidacy form is there as well. And to register to be a candidate for that position, you have to register August 24th in our office from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and we're recommending folks make an appointment. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you for that update for our constituents. I did have a meeting, or a town hall meeting, about a week ago, and I just want to thank all the constituents that were there. We had about 30 constituents that came out, and we had a great discussion. I do plan on having another meeting on the 17th of August. But we'll be sending that email out here in the next week or so, just to when we finalize the date. But I think we're looking at August 17th. So we had a great discussion. So I was really happy to see so many constituents come out and be a part of that meeting. So a lot more things to discuss, so in the future we'll have more meetings coming forward. Are there any other elected officials that are online via WebEx or phone that would like to make any announcements? Tessa Jo, do you see any other elected officials that may want to make announcement to their constituents?
No, Mr. Chair, they're not signed on via WebEx.
Okay, thank you, Tessa Jo. Okay, so we're going to go on to item number 11. Actually, we're on 10, matters from the county attorney, and this was tabled. We don't need to go into executive session today. Is that correct, Attorney Schaefer?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's correct. Item 10A, however, is a housekeeping item from our last meeting, since the board adjourned the open meeting when it went into executive session. So we'd just be looking for a motion to have the minutes of this meeting reflect that the matters discussed during the July 13, 2021 executive session were limited only to those specified in the motion for closure.
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton and a second from Commissioner Garcia. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Attorney Schaefer. Next, we're going to go on to item number 11, and these are just informal items. I don't believe that any of the commissioners have any questions or comments, but I'm going to open up to the floor if there's any questions or comments from staff on these informational reports. No. Okay, seeing none. We're going to go on to item number 12A. Okay, and this is a presentation and public hearing on Santa Fe County Infrastructure and Capital Improvement Plan, the ICIP. And this is the first public hearing, and from the Growth Management Department, we have Mr. Paul Olafson.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. I'm Paul Olofsson with the Planning Division. Before you tonight, we are having our first of two public hearings. Second public hearing will be scheduled for August 31st. This is our annual process for reviewing and then approving the list of potential capital projects that the legislature can consider for funding through the capital outlay process in the upcoming legislative session. I've just handed out, and Robert, thank you for helping me, have handed out the preliminary list. You'll notice there is no ranking on this. At the next public hearing, we will come back and request that we select the top 5 ranking of projects, and that's a requirement from DFA every year. We also have reached out to communities, community members, as well as nonprofits that have worked with us in the past, and included whatever we've received to date. If we do receive any additional requests prior to the next meeting, we'll work with those as well. There's about 50 projects on this list totaling approximately $9.9 million. We did receive some funding last year, about 5.4, I believe, million from the legislature, and in various projects, some that were on our list and some that came from other places. I would be happy to meet with any of you, all commissioners, along with our capital planner, Maggie Moore, who couldn't be with us tonight, and go more deeply into any specific projects you have questions about, and that can be arranged at your convenience. Lastly, we did review these projects through our capital planning process that's been newly initiated, and through the capital planning committee, and with the various county subject experts of fire, roads, etc. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, but I'm going to go to commissioners first. Are there any questions for Mr. Olofsson from the commission? Commissioner Hughes?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wondered, how do we add projects to the list that we know about in our districts?
Mr. Chairman, you can contact myself and or Maggie Moore, and we can work with you through your liaison, or yourself directly, either.
Okay, and so one of the projects, and I know I talked about this with Public Works, there's a priority, and I think it's on their list, to put a bike trail along Avenida Azul. Are bike trails a part of this list, or is that a different type of project?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hughes, we did review that project, and we're right now preparing to do our Public Works is preparing to do a study on feasibility and cost. So we didn't include construction funds at this time because we don't know what those are or the extent of it. So that project is moving forward. We're going to try and do the preliminary study first, and then come back with more realistic construction costs.
Okay, so you don't put the project on the list till you have the estimate of the cost?
Typically, no.
Okay.
And I also should mention, it's a good reminder that in the costs, we did include an escalator because we've noticed through the pandemic period that our construction costs have risen. So we, as a committee, examined the costs and did escalate them in orders that we would, if we receive funding through the legislature, be more likely to be able to afford to finish the projects.
Okay, thank you. That's all for me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Garcia?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yes, we did have community meetings back in February, and I think I noted in the memo. And
So
we also did email outreach as well.
All right. And also, where's the Carlson subdivision park at, Mr. Chair, Paul?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Garcia, it's over off of the East Frontage Road in the Carlson subdivision. There was a piece of property that was dedicated to the county for a park site way, way back. And actually, Commissioner Hughes was contacted by his constituents, and we had a community meeting out there, and we told them that we would put it on this project list.
So you need to change that, Mr. Chair, to commission, that's wrong commission district, that's not 3.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's a mistake.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Any other questions, comments from the board? I'm sure we may actually have some later. If there's not any other questions or comments, I just want to thank Mr. Olafson for providing this spreadsheet to the commission, and we'll definitely, if we have any questions or comments, we'll be notifying you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 13, and this is concluding business. Is there any other?
Mr. Chair, I believe that was supposed to be a public hearing. So
Oh,
I don't,
sorry about
there's
that.
no one here in attendance, but you may want to make sure no one is on WebEx. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Reminded me, Attorney Schaefer, I mentioned it before too, and I seem to have let it slip my mind. But at any rate, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak in favor or opposition to the items that we have listed before us here for projects that we have in the different districts? Tessa Jo, is there anybody online that would that is signed on that may want to make comments to this? Or
Mr. Chair, there is no one who has requested to speak at this public hearing at this time.
okay, so hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and move on to item number 13, which is concluding business. If there's not any announcements from any of the commissioners, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton. Do I hear a second?
Second?
And a second from Commissioner Hughes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.